Hello everyone, my name is Sloan and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are talking about soil. So I started mixing up my normal soil mix and I remembered that someone had asked me to make a video on this. So now I'm finally making it. I'm sorry it's been a few months. I love making videos that you guys suggest, so if you have other suggestions, definitely leave some in the comments, but let's just get started talking about soil. So the mix that I'm going to show you today is what I do for my aroid plants. When I have other plants that I'm trying to plant up, like succulents for example, I do other things. Mainly for that I use cactus soil, but today we're just going to dive into a really easy mix for aroids. This mix only has 4 ingredients and honestly, it could definitely be less. It's just kind of fun to mix things together. So the first ingredient is perlite, which the point of having perlite in your soil mix is for drainage. The perlite doesn't really add anything to the soil other than letting it drain, which is super important, especially for aroids. They don't like to sit in very soggy, wet soil. So you want whatever soil mix you use for aroids to be very well draining, and perlite is fantastic for that. I would love to try pumice at some point, but I can't find it locally and it's expensive online. So perlite it is for now. I've used multiple brands for my perlite and I've honestly have never really noticed a difference, but right now I'm using Miracle-Gro's perlite mix and it's very fine. I think I have tried other brands that are more chunky and like, I don't know, you might find that you like one or the other, but as long as you're using perlite or pumice, you're probably going to have a pretty decent, well draining mixture as long as you use enough of it, regardless of whatever the brand is. The next ingredient, for lack of a better way of putting it, is orchid bark. So orchid bark is great for a number of reasons. One reason is that it's also something that you can add that's a little bit well draining. It's not going to soak up water like a sponge necessarily, but it will hold on to a little bit of moisture because it's wood. So it's good for holding on to some moisture, but not absolute like sopping wet moisture, which is awesome. It's also fantastic for aroids because aroids are known, at least a lot of them, for being epiphytes, meaning that they like kind of grab on to trees. And so the orchid bark sort of tricks the plant into thinking it's grabbing onto a tree. At least that's how I think about it. So I really love including this in my mixtures. And the brand I've been using lately is this one. I think it's Super Moss. And mostly just because it's what I've been able to find. I'm able to find it locally. You can also buy it on Amazon. But I've heard some people go to pet stores and they buy reptile bark and they use that. And so I think at some point I'm gonna have to go to a pet store and try that out. I don't know. I've heard that that's a lot cheaper, so I'll definitely have to explore that at some point. But for right now, I have this in most of my plants and it's been working well. So I've been enjoying it. So the next 2 ingredients I have are actually soil mixes. So this is where it gets into like, am I making my soil mix more complicated than it needs to be? This is Happy Frog potting mix, which is made by the brand Fox Farms. And I really love it. It's, I don't know, it just feels nice. It feels well constructed. There's already perlite in it. I don't know that there is like big chunks of orchid bark, but there is, some amount of chunkiness in the soil. And yeah, I really like it. And I think you could easily just use this and maybe a little bit of orchid bark and be perfectly fine. And the last ingredient is, again, another Fox Farm soil. And this one is Ocean Forest potting soil. And it's honestly really similar looking. Like if I held these two side by side, I can't tell a difference enough so that when I originally was prepping for this video, I put soil in both of these bowls and then I was like, oh my gosh, which is which? And I dumped them out and redid it because I wanted to make sure that I was correct when I was showing you the two. But the only reason I can tell which is which now is because I set them in very specific locations. There is a pretty big difference in the ingredients in each of these though. So the Happy Frog soil mix has bat guano and earthworm castings, which are worm poop, and bat guano is bat poop. And here I am sticking my hands in it. But Both of those are really great fertilizers for your plants, and that's why they're included. And the phosphate percentage for the Happy Frog soil mix is 0.3%. And the biggest difference between the two is that phosphate percentage. The Ocean Forest potting mix has 0.45% phosphate, and I don't know that much about what that means, but I know that it's different. And then the Ocean Forest potting mix also has quite a few other ingredients added, and I'm gonna read directly from the bag because it's a lot. So it has fish emulsion, crab meal, shrimp meal, earthworm castings and bat guano again, kelp meal, and oyster shell. So, you know, that's why it's called Ocean Forest, I guess. A lot of that is from the ocean. And then just so you can see what the Happy Frog bag looks like, there is a tree frog on there. It's kind of bent, but so just so you can locate this if you see it at a local store. So when it comes to the two different kinds, I have heard some say that Ocean Forest is too strong in terms of a fertilizer for indoor houseplants, and so a lot of people prefer the Happy Frog. But I've also heard of people who use just the Ocean Forest with absolutely no adders and love it. So you can make whatever choice you want. Part of owning plants is an experiment and trying new things. So I'm just sharing what I like to do with my plants and what I've heard others like to do, and you can go from there and either try out what I'm doing or do something completely on your own and learn from it. And even now, I'm sure that I will change my soil mix at some point in the future because that's half the fun, is experimenting new things. But I have found that this is working really well for me right now. So in terms of the percentages that I like to actually add to the entire component, I generally eyeball it, but for this video, I'm gonna try and make it something that you can replicate at home. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 part of the Happy Frog soil, 1 part of the Ocean Forest, 1 part orchid bark, 1 part perlite, and a little bit more Happy Frog, so another part of Happy Frog, and mix it. And that is pretty much it. So it's 2 parts Happy Frog, 1 part Ocean Forest, 1 part orchid bark, and 1 part perlite. So let me mix up a little more of this so you can kind of see the whole thing. And here is the finished product. I've found that most of my plants are super duper happy in this, and I will modify it if it's a plant that needs a little bit extra moisture. And honestly, what I do for that is I will just mix in Miracle-Gro's like moisture control potting mix, which is nothing fancy, and I've never had any issues with it. I know that Miracle-Gro has a reputation among the plant community where a lot of people say that it gives you fungus gnats, and from my experience, you can get fungus gnats from any soil. I actually went to buy Happy Frog soil, which is that's a premium houseplant mix, and you kind of pay for it in that way. It's not cheap, but I went to go buy some of that at a local store, and there were a bunch of fungus gnats like flittering all around it that were living in the soil. So the thing with Miracle-Gro that can cause it to have fungus gnats is that it can be too like moisture dense, but when you mix it in with something like this, it's not going to be a huge issue. So anyway, I would do that for like calatheas, marantas, that kind of thing. I would mix in something a little bit more, something that's going to hold on to moisture a little bit more. But for most philodendron, Hoya, I think I have, Syngonium in this. They're going to be some really happy plants. And here is a super close-up view. Really chunky, really fantastic soil mix. And what I usually do is I'll mix up a big batch and keep it in this pet food container. And that way I just have stuff on hand, ready to go, and I don't have to mix up a whole batch of soil every time I want to repot something. And then I keep one of these little scoops in that bin, and I found that these little scoops are super, super, super handy. When I saw other people using them, I was like, that looks really handy, but is it really necessary? And so I put off buying them, but it's 100% worth the money. And I'll link this down below. I got it from Amazon in like a pack, and it just scoops the soil so nicely. I think at one point I might get a like metal one. Like, this is super stained, but I really like this for now. So really very well worth it to get a soil scoop. So I found this to be a very, very easy soil mixture to put together. And again, I really think that you could probably use Happy Frog for sure on its own, and probably Ocean Forest on its own, and not have to even mix anything in and have some really happy plants. But I like to add a little extra, partially because it's fun and partially because, you know, a little extra orchid bark and a little extra perlite isn't going to hurt anybody and might help. So that's just what I like to do for my plants. If you do something different with your soil mixture, I would love to hear about it down below. I am a big fan of Becca de la Plants. If you haven't watched her YouTube channel, I would definitely recommend it. And she has soil that's already like completely mixed and looks really fantastic, and I really want to try that at some point. So sometime in the future, I'm gonna order a batch of that, or I'm like kind of hoping that a plant shop near me will start keeping that in stock, because it would be a lot cheaper for me to buy it from a local plant shop than to have it shipped to me. But eventually I'll try that out and see how it compares to what I'm doing. And if you're someone that doesn't want to mix your own soil, I haven't used De La Plant's mix, but I've heard really good things. So you might want to try that out as well. And I think that is all from me. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.